Hi, this is Stephanie from Ventisco, and this is our first episode of Tech Chat. Many people have heard of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, which is incredibly popular nowadays. But only few know about the underlying digital foundation that supports it. In fact, one of the reasons that I chose this topic is that in the last years, there's been a huge amount of investment and interest in cryptocurrency. And I think we all agree that if you are looking to buy a cryptocurrency, then you might as well understand the technology behind it. So let's talk today about blockchain. First, it's important to mention that the uses of blockchain extends far beyond Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is only one use case for blockchain. What is a blockchain? How does it work? What problems does it solve, and how can it be used? Blockchain owes its name to the way it stores transaction data in blocks that are linked together to form a chain. And those blocks contain information. It could be any information. And when new information is added, a record is created in the form of a block. Now, if previous information is amended or changed, also a new block is added to the chain. This technique was originally described in 1991 by a group of researchers, and it was originally intended to timestamp digital documents so that it's not possible to backdate them or to tamper with them, almost like a notary. However, it went by mostly unused until it was adapted by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009 to create the digital cryptocurrency Bitcoin. In simple words, blockchain is a shared, distributed ledger with decentralized control, which means that it is completely open to anyone, and it is used to record and track anything of value, from medical records to financial transactions and even food supply chain transactions. Now, they have a very interesting property. They are tamper-resistant, which means once some block has been recorded inside the blockchain, it becomes very difficult to change it. This is because it uses a cryptographic hashing algorithm, which makes the most important function of blockchain, immutability. How does that work? Well, let's take a closer look at a block. Each block has some data, a hash, and the hash of the previous block. And the data stored inside the block depends on the type of blockchain. A Bitcoin's blockchain, for example, stores the details of a transaction, such as the sender, the receiver, and the amount of coins. Each block also has a hash. You can compare a hash to a fingerprint. It identifies a block and all of its content, and it's always unique, just as a fingerprint. So once a block is created, its hash is being calculated. And changing something inside the block will cause the hash to change. In other words, hashes are very useful when you want to detect changes to blocks. If the fingerprint of a block changes, it is no longer the same block. And the third element inside each block is the hash of the previous block. This effectively creates a chain of blocks that are chronologically connected together, and it's this cryptography technique that makes a blockchain so secure. Let's take an example. Here we have a chain of 3 blocks. As you can see, each block has its own hash and the hash of the previous block. So block number 3 points to block number 2, and number 2 points to number 1. Now, the first block is a bit special. It cannot point to previous blocks because it's the first one, and we call this the genesis block. Now, let's say that you tamper with the second block. This causes the hash of this block to change as well. In turn, that will make block 3 and all following blocks invalid, because they no longer store a valid hash of the previous block. So changing a single block will make all following blocks in a blockchain invalid. But using hashes is not enough to prevent tampering. Let's take a look at another security technique that blockchain uses, the proof-of-work mechanism. Computers these days are very fast and can calculate hundreds of thousands of hashes per second. So you can use this to effectively tamper with a block and recalculate all hashes of other blocks so you can make your blockchain valid again. So to mitigate this, blockchains have something called proof-of-work, and it's a mechanism that is used to slow down the creation of new blocks. In Bitcoin's case, for example, it takes about 10 minutes to calculate the required proof of work and add a new block to the chain. This mechanism makes it very hard to tamper with the block, because if you tamper with one block, you will need to recalculate the proof of work of all following blocks. So the security of a blockchain comes from its creative use of hashing and the proof of work mechanism. But there is one more way that blockchains secure themselves, and that is by being distributed. So instead of using a central entity to manage the chain, blockchain uses a peer-to-peer network, and anyone is allowed to join. Now, when someone joins this network, he gets a full copy of the blockchain. Getting a full copy of the blockchain will allow the nodes to determine if blocks are valid and to constantly verify if the transactions are still in order. Now, each node can receive and send transactions to other nodes, and the data is synchronized across the network as it is transferred. Now let's see what happens when someone adds a new block. That block is sent to everyone on the network. Each node then verifies the block to make sure that it hasn't been tampered with. If everything checks out, each node adds this block to their own blockchain. And all nodes in this network create consensus, which means that all nodes agree what blocks are valid and which aren't. So any tampered block will be rejected by other nodes in the network. In other words, for a transaction to be valid, all participants must agree on its validity. So to successfully tamper with a blockchain, you will need to tamper with all blocks on the chain, redo the proof of work for each block, and take control of more than 50% of the peer-to-peer network. Only then will your tampered block become accepted by everyone else. And that is almost impossible to do, which makes transactions on a blockchain network secure, authenticated, and verifiable. Now, blockchains are also constantly evolving, and one of the most recent developments is the creation of smart contracts. These contracts are simple programs like a set of rules that govern a transaction, and they are stored on a blockchain, and they can be used to automatically execute transactions, such as exchanging coins based on certain conditions. To conclude, the creation of blockchain technology is changing how the world works. Some companies that have already incorporated blockchain include Walmart, Siemens, Pfizer, Maersk, and others. IBM, for example, created their own food trust blockchain to trace the journey that food products take to get to its locations. There is no limit to what types of industry and transactions that will benefit from blockchain technology. This technology can be used to store medical records, create digital notary, or even collecting taxes. So now you know what a blockchain is, how it works on a basic level, and what problems it solves. Thank you for watching. In my next video, I'm gonna talk about cryptocurrency, so don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.